David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another review. Today I have for you something a bit different, and that is a discussion about glass pens. What I'm going to do today is talk about glass pens and what they can be used for, and I have 5 different glass pens to show you, varying in price range. Thanks go out to Wancher, who has provided 3 of the 5 glass pens for review. In order to get a closer look at these pens, please join me over here at camera 2. First up, we have a glass pen from Rohr & Klingner. This pen retails for around $30, and I like the looks of this pen a great deal. It's functional and not overly fancy. Sometimes glass pens as well as dip pen holders can be very curvy and flamboyant and ergonomic. I tend to care for the more simple and straightforward designs. Just my personal preference though. I like the white ribbons on this material. When you spin it around, it gives it a nice optical illusion of movement. This pen is rather straight after a slight protrusion at the beginning, which really helps maintain your grip on this pen. The distinct feature that you will see on all glass nibs pens are these grooves. When you dip this pen in ink, the ink gets trapped a bit in those grooves and will slowly drain out of those grooves via capillary action as you write. Another cool thing about this specific pen is that when you dip it, the color of the ink kind of reflects a bit through the forward parts of the pen, not all the way down the handle here, but with each color you use, this pen has a slightly different look to it. In regard to the nib itself, here is a microscope shot of what the end of this nib looks like. You can see here that it's a bit flat with a little bit of chipping on the sides. To be honest with you, I'm not certain if this is how the pen was manufactured and the sides were ground down a little bit, or if the small chipping happened over time with use. Now, this is the one pen I find myself using most. I use this glass pen whenever I'm doing an ink swab. And just to show you an example of that, these are the cards that I use. These are Nemesine word cards that actually are no longer produced, but I actually purchased a bit of inventory of those, so I have enough stock to last me quite some time. So here is the card, and in regard to the ink, the first ink that we're going to use here is Colorverse Andromeda. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, you're going to dip this in. Now, since you're not writing that much, you don't need to dip it that far in. And once you've dipped it in, I would suggest kind of tapping off the nib just slightly, because you just want to make sure that there's not too much ink on there and you wouldn't want it to kind of glob onto the page. So here we have Colorverse Andromeda. And then what I do is I actually get a Q-tip, let that soak here for a second, and then go ahead and do a swab. Let's go ahead and put this away. And that's how I do my swabs. And it's nice because then I'm not having to clean up a fully inked pen. I can just clean up this nib. And this pen is very easy to clean as well. You just take a tissue, or sometimes even just a wet tissue, and on this one, for the most part, the ink wipes right off. Or if you just wet it a little bit, just with a little bit of work, now it is virtually clean and ready to use again. If I'm doing an ink swab, I'd rather use a pen like this as opposed to inking or dipping a fountain pen, which will take a bit more effort in order to clean. So using this pen for me is just more efficient. For a second glass pen, this one here has a bit of a different design. Now, I didn't purchase this one. This one was sent along by Wancher when they sent me a couple of other pens. We'll see here in just a bit. It was just to show a comparison between a lower cost glass pen and the ones that we will be looking at. So I'm not certain of the brand name or what this pen costs, but I would say that it's somewhat equivalent to the Rohr & Klingner, maybe a little bit more. So I'm guessing maybe in the $40 to $45 range. Now, the section on this pen is significantly more pronounced, and the body is grooved and twisted. The handle tapers and is extremely thin, so much so that it feels like it would be very easy to break. This end here feels spaghetti strand thin. It truly feels like if I just put the wrong kind of pressure on this in my hand, that this thing could honestly snap off. So you do need to be careful with these pens. The ones I have don't have roll stops, so you have to be careful that things like this don't roll off your desk and onto the hardwood floors. I speak from experience because this is my very first glass pen that I purchased. This one was from J. Herbin and was $19. This was a very nice pen which performed very well, just like the Roaring Klingner, but unfortunately it did roll off of my desk and the handle here shattered. So you need to be careful. Okay, back to this pen here. Here is a close-up of the nib. You can see that this one isn't rounded at all and is significantly sharp and jagged. In regard to a writing sample, here is some Pelikan Edelstein Aquamarine. And we'll just do a little bit of writing sample. And as you would imagine from the close-up of that nib, this one is very sharp and very much digs into the page. So this one doesn't necessarily provide the best writing experience. Now we're going to take a bit of a step up in quality and appearance. In order to do so, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. And with the rise in quality, there is also a corresponding rise in price. This is a pen from Launcher. It arrives in this very nice box. Inside, we have a pen. One thing, it has a very nice protector, kind of a little rubbery protector on the end, which is nice, and a very nice pen pillow that we'll talk about in just a second. This is the Kunisaki glass dip pen, and this one here retails for $135. There are a few things going on here. First of all, it is significantly thicker than the previous models that we were looking at. It feels very solid. The nib is larger as well. Here is a close-up of the tip of the nib. You can see here that some care has been taken to grind the end down a bit into more of a rounded tip, and that plays out in the performance as well. There is a nice flower here, actually two flowers on either side of the section, which are actually in the glass. This isn't just a painting on the glass. The handle has a very wavy design, and there's some gold flake material incorporated into the glass as well. Now, typically a pre-made glass nib is attached to a glass handle, but this pen is made from one solid piece of glass, so it's much more sturdy. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of a writing sample. This here is some Monteverde Mandarin Orange ink. Again, you want to kind of tap it on the side just to make sure you're not going to get any globs here. I find that this pen writes like a Western medium. This pen definitely feels sturdier. I don't have the fear that I'm going to break this thing in half. In addition, it provides a better writing experience than the previous two pens. Here's a look at this pen pillow. There are 4 flowers with an underlying rainbow of colors. Something I like here is that there is a piece of rubber on the underside of this pillow, so it adheres pretty well to a desk. It doesn't slide around. I also like that there are multiple orientations or spots that you can lay this pen in. It doesn't need to be laid down specifically or perfectly in one particular spot in order for it to stay. This pen is available in several different colors and pattern variations on the Wancher site. I'll put a link to their site in the notes below. Finally, we have one more pen from Wancher, and this is something from their Shizuku line and is something different. This glass pen utilizes a converter. It arrives in this box, and inside we have a couple of things. There is a little bit of information about this pen. Then there is a bottle of Wancher ink. And then inside of this ribbon here, and inside of this kimono sleeve, let's go ahead and set this aside, we have a pen. This is the Shizuku Mars. Let me actually zoom in on this one. The body of this pen is made from duralumin. It is material commonly used in the aircraft and aerospace industries since it is very strong yet fairly light. The body is anodized in order to achieve this color and pattern, and I think this red pattern looks really nice. There are some Japanese kanji on the barrel here. I'm unsure if this is the name of an artist or if it says something else, but I have always liked the artistic look of kanji. The end of the barrel tapers down a bit here, but it's just for aesthetic purposes. It's not utilized for posting the cap. The cap on this pen does not post. You actually unscrew the cap to reveal the glass nib. Now, you can simply dip this nib, but like the other pens I showed, but the distinguishing feature, like I mentioned, of this pen is the converter. The barrel actually unscrews, and first of all, you see here that there is a Wancher logo which is kind of interesting. I don't know of too many other companies that have branding on the inside of their pens, so that's unique. That's something that I like. Inside, you can see we have a converter. The inner workings of this glass nib and converter system is something that Wancher has actually filed a utility patent for in Japan. So it's a unique system exclusive to Wancher's pens. Now, something I feel is a bit of a design flaw with this pen, you see here that there is only one set of threads for both the barrel and the cap. When you put the barrel back on, it uses a little bit more than half of the threads, and then the rest are used by the cap. The problem with this is that several times when I have unscrewed the cap, it actually unscrews the barrel instead. So it disengages this. So I find myself having to play around with this on a regular basis just to make sure that I'm unscrewing the cap as opposed to unscrewing the barrel. Let's go ahead and ink this pen up with the Wancher ink, which arrived with this pen. It's just like inking up a traditional fountain pen. Let's go ahead and put this in here and do that, and you can now see that there is ink in the converter. And let me just go ahead and wipe the section off a little bit, but you can see now that there is ink on the nib as well. Let's go ahead and set this aside and reattach this. And let's do a little bit of writing sample. It is fairly smooth. If you are someone that wants to use glass pens for art and doesn't want to deal with the varying line widths that you might experience when consistently dipping a pen, then this might be a good solution for you. You'll get that consistent line, but you'll be able to draw or write for a considerable amount of time. Now, one thing that you have to understand when you're using a glass nib, just because you're writing with glass doesn't make it feel like you're writing on glass. that you're really going to get a varying look, a varying feel with the different type of glass pen that you use. You can see that it's fairly ground down. You could actually have a choice of nib size on this pen. You can get extra fine, fine, or medium, and you could get the nibs in either clear glass or in black. On this particular nib, this is actually the clear nib. I took a picture when the pen was inked, so this isn't black glass, it is actually the ink. Now, this pen is significantly more expensive than the others I have shown today. It is available in a number of different anodized colors and retails for $300. There is also a model slightly more expensive which has the same hammered metal body that you find in Wancher's Japan Blue pen. It is very nice. Like the other Wancher model, you can find a link to where you can check out this pen on their site in the notes below. For me personally, while I think this pen looks great, the converter aspect of the pen doesn't necessarily match up well with how I utilize a glass pen, but that doesn't mean that it's not a fantastic tool for other folks out there, especially for artists. The ink flow is consistent, and I haven't experienced any issues with the ink dripping or pooling out of the nib at all, so it performs exactly as it should. So there you have an overview of a few different types of glass nibbed pens. I hope that this has been interesting and somewhat educational for you. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.